Welcome to the VWell Podcast, real conversations with our experts about our mission to revolutionize wellness in body, mind, and soul. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to this episode of the VWell Expert Podcast. I'm delighted to have my friend Joan Sotkin be our guest today. She is an incredible wellness expert who really specializes in healing and money and emotions, and I can't wait to have Joan here to tell more about what she does. Welcome, Joan.
Hi there. I'm so glad to be here today.
So let's start by telling us what wellness modalities you share. What is it that you do for people in this world?
Well, that's hard to describe. I mean, keep in mind that I'm 84 years old. And so I started healing more than 50 years ago when I gave up sugar and I started knowing that there was a way for me not to be sick for the rest of my life. So I've tried just about everything. And what I find most important and what I try to teach people is how to get in touch with their inner voice, so to speak. You know, so many people say I have an inner voice, but I'm afraid to follow it. And if you follow it, that's the secret. I mean, I do stuff that doctors think is ridiculous, and yet, and they go, yeah, sure, you know, or give me the blank doctor stare, which I think they work very hard to develop. And so, and to know that whatever I tell you, whatever a doctor tells you, is just what I've learned in my lifetime. And you are entirely different from that. And so I can only guide you. I can't really teach you. What I can teach you is how to get better in touch with yourself and how to make better decisions about your health, wealth, and peace of mind.
Excellent. Now, you said your wellness journey began 50 years ago. Do you want to tell us how that began or the key moments of it? What has the wellness path been like for you?
Well, first of all, the key moment was when the family doctor, we didn't call them primaries at the time, when the family doctor said, "You're just a hypochondriac and going to have to learn to live with all your problems." And fortunately, I have a pretty strong screw you attitude. And I said, that's not my story. And I had started meditating, and that was in 72, and I had started meditating that year. And so I started thinking about it, and I got led to this doctor who was really a maverick, and he just did things that no other doctor did. And he said to me, and I had been a suicidal depressive for 15 years, and he said, if you give up sugar, you won't be depressed anymore. So I gave up sugar that day. It was a little too sudden, but I did it. And so I haven't eaten sugar in 53 years. And to me, and of course I started learning about nutrition and, you know, whatever was available at the time. There was only one health food store in Los Angeles where I was at the time. And so I've been willing to try new things and found, remember, I had started meditating already. So I was in that space where I was willing to trust what was coming to me. And things came. And like one day I was in the health food store. I was living in Venice at the time. And this guy walked in and said, something's going on with your kidneys. And he had very long hair and he was very hippie, but sounded great. And he said, there's something wrong with your kidneys. And I said, how do you know that? And he said, because of the circles under your eyes. And so I started with Jinshindo. And one thing led to another. So I've tried just about every alternative. And I love microcurrent therapy now. I really believe in physical therapy. But I think you have to be led to what you need to know for your particular system. Microcurrent might not work for everybody. Dietary things might not work for everybody. And the idea behind the money connection is people think they're not making enough money or they can't hold on to money or whatever their issue is because there's something wrong with them. Well, there's nothing wrong with you that needs fixing. You just have emotional habits that you learned in early childhood or before when your mother was pregnant with you. I mean, there's a whole story about the ancestors. And so once you stop blaming yourself for your current position and you say to yourself, well, how am I feeling? Then it takes you, and you have to learn how to recognize what you're feeling. It takes you down a whole different path, and you can learn to change your emotional habits. I'm still doing that at my age, but it's a lot easier when you start as soon as you can, and it's hard to do alone, because that's why I love the fact that you're putting together a group where you can share things with people, because you need to know that you're not the only one on the block who does these weird things. And fortunately, I've done weird things all my life, so if it's not weird, I don't understand it. I look pretty straight, but
you've had so much experience. What are some of the biggest influences in terms of your, what you teach now from your own experience, but what have you sampled, or what books or what resources have really shaped you as an expert and a healer?
The first one was Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. Then there was Paul Bragg, who I met at one point, who was 96 and died off the coast of Australia swimming. So I figured he had some answers. and But I would get information and then use that inner compass to be able to determine whether I believed it for me. Also, the big thing that I did was in 1976, I gave away everything I owned. I had no money, didn't know where I was going to stay. I had no choice but to listen to what was going on inside. And some of the things I heard, I mean, people thought I was nuts. And I actually wrote a book about it called The Search for Connection, which I wrote after I wrote the money book, which was Build Your Money Muscles. And I've just let life teach me. I have no credentials. I have no letters after my name. I'm not officially certified in anything other than EFT, which I learned when it first became popular. And so it's a matter of trusting yourself to find what you need for you. And it takes practice. And you've got to try things that make no sense, but they're not going to kill you. One of the things I've learned is that it's really hard to die. You almost have to work at it, and at this age, I don't take any major drugs. I haven't had a cold in at least 12 or 15 years. I mean, you don't have to be sick.
I love that. Yeah.
And if something doesn't feel right, I find out what I'm feeling. And like I had some problems with my foot. I'm hypermobile, and so my hands and feet don't work entirely right. And so if my shoes aren't working, I have to figure out what to do in the shoe in order to make it work right. In other words, don't think that someone else has all your answers. Try your own answers first, and then ask someone else. Or ask someone else and just evaluate what they're telling you. But just because they have letters after their name doesn't mean they're experts.
I love that, and I love your emphasis on helping people become their own expert. Was there a moment when you yourself were like, okay, this is what I'm doing, that you transitioned into the work you do? Was there an aha moment, or did it suddenly evolve over time?
It evolved because I always wanted to share what I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
When Swami Parampathy taught me how to meditate, I wrote up a 6-page thing and sent it out to, I knew I wanted to be in mail order because I was so sick, I couldn't imagine going to a job. So I started collecting email addresses very early. And I mailed this thing to everybody on my list in whatever method was available at that time. And so I knew it was I didn't call it a mission. We didn't have all the words we have now. I just knew I had to share it. And then when I started my crystal business in 1980, I started getting this guidance for doing this energy work. And it was so powerful, it scared me because of some of the things that were going on. A woman came in who was in awful pain, and she had been to all the chiropractor. And so I said, would you like me to try this? And I did. And when I finished, she felt fine. And that was kind of scary for me. And this guy walked into my store one day, and I said, what's that pain in your chest? And he looked at me and he said, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. And my goal was to sell crystals. So this was in the early 1980s. And so every time I did one of those things, they would buy a crystal. So I thought it was a pretty good way to sell crystals. And I wound up with a line of stones called Joan stones in 600 stores. And I mean, I've had a very interesting life. And I learned how to sell right out of college when I was selling great books of the Western world door to door. So, yeah. Do you want the books delivered on Tuesdays or Thursdays?
I love that. I love that. In all of this, what wellness practice has been the most consistent? Is there one or two that you've, like all these years, you've always gone back to?
Well, I never stopped the nutrition stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I never stopped that. And I never stop my inner journey. Because that's how I get where I am. And so I've developed a way of communicating with myself with a capital S. And so I'm willing to sit on the couch and wait for instructions. I don't have to figure things out the same way. And so that's pretty much evolved. And when I went through a physical problem after I had sepsis, we have no idea how I got it. And while I was in the hospital, I had this wonderful mystical experience. So I knew there was a reason for it. And so just watch what's happening in your life and trust your own sense. Whatever you decide to do, you're not going to die. And so courage is what you need in order to be who you are, because the world wants you to be like everyone else. And there is nothing about you that's like everyone else. I mean, that's pretty hard for people. They want to be like, they want to look like people. They wear those eyelashes that go out to the world. And they're doing stuff like at one point I tried having the fake nails, and every time I went to the place, I'd fall asleep because it was so toxic. So I don't use chemicals. I don't eat crap. I exercise every day. And I think the self-care part is the most important part of your healing. That, yes, there are sometimes I go I have a friend who's a naturopath who does body work. And so we exchange. I'm helping him with his business, and he does whatever he does, brings the table. He retired, so he brings the the table to my apartment and straightens me out. And so, and the thing that makes the most difference for me at this particular moment is the microcurrent. And most people are even afraid to try it. The unit I use is like $30. There's one place you can get it. Anyone who's interested, just let me know.
Yeah.
and ChatGPT tells me where to put the electrodes and how long to leave them there. And then I have to see if it works and change the timing if that's what I have to do. So you are your biggest healer. You have a built-in healing system. Don't ignore it. Don't think that someone else, even with, I do this energy work, but it's, I do it over online. I did it on the phone the other day for someone. It doesn't fix you. What it does is activate your inner healer. So, like one of the people I'm working with now has Crohn's disease. And it was pretty bad when I first met him, and he's been on the healing path and was not quite getting there because he didn't quite understand the emotional thing. And I said, and this was like in April, and I said to him, by September, you won't have terrible symptoms. And he doesn't. As of September 1st, I said, how are you doing? And it's just, he's going to have a colonoscopy this week so he can see what the healing has been. But doctors are great when they give you tests, because then they tell you, then you know what's going on. And that's what you need to know. You need to learn to read the blood tests, and you learn to, in other words, and now with AI, you can learn anything you want. You just ask a question. You just have to know how to ask the questions. And that's it. So, and I don't think that healing should be complicated, expensive, or difficult. Now, giving up sugar is difficult. But if you take it one step at a time and don't try to do it overnight the way I did it because it's too sudden for your system, then, I can teach you how to do things. I can't necessarily tell you what to do. I can give you suggestions. I love it when I tell people, well, what about this? And they go, well, I know I tried that. And so I don't mind when people disagree with me. My goal is to help you find out why you're not reaching your what you want, your intentions. Why you're not able to do what you want, because you're very aware of your own resistance. I mean, everybody tells me, well, I'm very resistant. Well, you want to keep that?
Well, speaking of that, and with resistance, one question I ask everybody, and the answer is always interesting to me. Is there any wellness modality you've tried, and no judgment, found this isn't for me or this doesn't work?
There were probably a number of them. But also, like, I was very into acupuncture for a long time, or I was very into chiropractic, and they no longer did it for me. So you also have to be willing to say no, and I've had enough. In other words, you have to really stay in touch with yourself, and you have to learn how to do that. The other thing in my book, Build Your Money Muscles, the first chapter is about conditioning yourself for change. Because the reason people have resistance is because their amygdala is telling them, if you don't know what the outcome is, it's dangerous. And you have to say, screw you to your amygdala, and just try it anyhow, because you're not going to die unless you're drinking poison or something.
If you were, this is another question I ask everybody, I'm always curious what the answer is if you were stranded on a desert island and you could bring one wellness tool or one wellness prop or one resource, what would you take with you?
Well, it's there already. Breathing.
Excellent.
Deep breathing, because that regulates the vagus nerve and helps you relax, so you're in a place to follow your intuition.
Couldn't be clearer. You've talked about this already in some ways, but is there one wellness quote unquote rule that you love breaking, or that you feel is like particularly silly, or that you break all the time?
Don't listen to other experts. Just hear what they have to say and integrate what they have to say and believe what you want.
Mm. Mm.
I mean, like, it's clear that being a vaccine skeptic is probably not a great idea. Now, so I get the COVID vaccine because I know what long COVID might feel like because of the post-sepsis syndrome. They're very similar. And so I get that, but I don't get the RSV or the pneumonia vaccine because I'm not exposed to that many people.
Mm.
In other words, it's often a combination of intuition and logic. Just don't buy into other people's BS, including mine.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
The compliment for me is when people will actually try what I suggest. Or move their lives. When people tell me how their lives have changed, I ask people to just work with me for 3 months. And very often, that's enough to get them pointed in the right direction. And so that's very satisfying to me. I don't, when you go to a therapist, they want you to stay for a really long time. Because they don't like the market.
Yeah, I like that 3 month. Is there any phrase or any saying that you find yourself saying all the time, whether, either not necessarily too much, but like a catchphrase or something?
Well, one of my favorites is, if one of us has to be uncomfortable, it doesn't have to be me.
Can you expand on that? How do you use that?
Well, it's a way of getting over your codependency. And for people who are in the wellness field, who feel responsible for their client's outcome, it's a very good thing. The thing that goes with that is what I call empathetic detachment. I understand how you feel, but I can't fix it.
That's very deep.
I mean, I have a whole lot of sayings. People call them Joan-isms.
Yeah. And they're amazing. You mentioned it before about the wellness profession. If you just, I always ask everybody this too. If you weren't working in wellness in this way, is there another profession you can imagine having, an alternative other life?
Well, I don't see this as a profession. I see it as just an expression of who I am.
I love that.
So I don't know that I have a choice, because it's like I knew I couldn't be an Olympic athlete because of all the Ehlers-Danlos keeps me from having what other people have in terms of energy. So I just follow where it leads, and if it doesn't feel good, I don't do it. Now, when you're in business, and if you're a healer, you're in business, you have to be willing to get over your dislike for numbers. And if you're in the wellness business, then you're in business. And a lot of wellness people don't learn enough about money and business. You have to familiarize yourself with the world of money and how it operates and what the trends are. And right now there's a lot to follow. So let's not just be into this other intuitive reality. You also have to know how to function in the world.
Looking back on it, what advice would you give your younger self on this whole journey?
Just wait, honey, you'll be okay.
I love that. Yeah, it's true. You've kind of answered this, but maybe there's something else to it, or you want to say it again. But what's the biggest misconception people have when about wellness in general?
That there's one way to do it, one pill to take, one expert to listen to. That you are not okay and you have a lot that needs to be fixed. There's nothing about you that's wrong. You just have to figure out who you are and what you need.
Mm, mm. And you've been in this world in different ways with your own journey for so many years. What do you see shifts? Like, is there a gradual way that the community, once there was only one health food store in LA, but like, what do you see in the wellness world shifting at any level?
It has gotten so complicated. We now have functional medicine that does the same thing as the doctors. They go down one lane and they think that's the truth. And I see people looking for something else. I did this thing on one of those series on trauma, and trauma is one of the big words now. Well, everybody's had trauma, and if you keep looking at, and are the methods that they're using too expensive, too complicated? There's something easier. I use a microcurrent. The unit cost me $30, and I just ask ChatGPT. I showed it the unit, and it told me what it was capable of doing. And I said, where should I put the electrodes? And it showed me. And I took a picture of them on my leg because I'm dealing with this so-called neuropathy now. And it said, no, the one of them is a little too low. Put it higher. I mean, this is a machine.
Yeah.
The doctors I go to know nothing about microcurrent. I've been using it for years. And they know about tens, but this is different. This is the same frequency as your body's electrical system, which is your nervous system. And you really, for me, it helps to have knowledge. Knowledge is power. And when you understand the basic systems, like the nervous system, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, the fascia, the neuropathist I go to works on fascia. They have the same medical training, but they focus on the fascia. So it's like not knowing what the carburetor is in your car. Well, you're going to go into a store, into a garage. They're going to know you know nothing about cars, and you have no idea whether they're telling you the truth. And how many times do people have something fixed and it breaks a week later? It's easy for me to learn. It's easier for you to learn. It's easy for me to learn. But I'm also highly motivated to learn. Right. Because I know my long-term survival, and I think I've had long-term survival, it depends on what I know, not what the guy in the office knows.
I couldn't agree more. Before I forget to ask, and I always put these in quotes, but I always ask everyone no matter what discipline they are, what's your favorite healthy food, in quotes?
Peanut butter.
And what's your favorite, in quotes, unhealthy food?
I don't eat any.
Great. I have two more questions. The first is what kind of impact, if you could summarize it, do you want your work to have on the world? Like what's the thing that gets you up in the morning that to do what you do?
I understand the question.
Mm-hmm.
I just love to do it. I feel motivated or inspired to do it. And because there's so many sick people now, I have to know that I can only do what's in front of me. And because I just moved from a house I was in for 25 years and a whole new space, I've just got my eyes open to see what shows up. I believe that if you get yourself in the right place, whatever you need shows up. It's getting yourself in the right place that's the trick. And I can tell you all about that.
I love that. And my last question is, what drew you to VWell as a founding expert? I knew you from before and have had many interactions with you and invited you immediately, and you were quick to respond. So what about VWell excites you or fits in with what you do?
Well, I see it as an opportunity to teach other people or to share what I know with other people who might be interested. But I never have any agenda as to what I want to accomplish. I like you. I trust you. I admire what you know, teach, and live. And I don't need to know any more than that. And I don't set the same kind of goals that people do. The goal is for me to be open and listening to what's coming towards me. Because I don't need to plan my life. I just have to live my life.
Well, that is a fantastic way to be. And I want to just thank you, Joan, for this interview and for being part of VWell. We are so glad to have you as one of our founding experts.
And I love being part of it because it's part of you.
Thanks for joining us on the VWell Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it, subscribe, and stay connected at VWellNow.com. See you next time.